Yeah, so historically, a lot of people, yeast manufacturers, and us included, have done blends or co-pitches. Where you take a strain, for instance, like our A24 dry hop is going to be a blend of A20 citrus and the A04 barbarian. So that's a blend, and when you use that over time, sometimes the exact ratio of the yeast change if you want to repitch it. So that's a downside to it. But when you're creating a hybrid or you're breeding yeast, then what you're able to get is a single inoculum or a single strain. And most of the time when you're doing this, the yeast that's a result of this is going to be a blend or a mosaic composition of the two parent strains. Yeah, so this one here, the I-22, during the breeding and hybridization process, we were taking Loki and juice, and we were going through sporulation. And the brewing yeast is kind of difficult to go through sporulation, but it does happen every once in a while. And there's some other tips and tricks that you can do to get better results. With this first I-22 Capri, we hit one of the objectives, which is to explore the sexual cycle of yeast, and that allows genetic recombination and breeding to occur. And so to just dive down a little bit on that, basically when we ferment and whenever we propagate, our yeast is going through a cloning cycle. So you know how they're budding yeast, you have a clone of one, it buds off from the mother, and then you have another clone. But with yeast, it's a fungus, and it can go through a sexual cycle where you give it a non-fermentable carbon source like potassium acetate. It can change the parameters a little bit, and then it will go through sort of like a hibernation or a survival state where it creates a spore of itself. So the cell wall becomes an ascus, and it has four sexual cells, sexual spores inside. And so that's one of the objectives that we have under the Imperialis project.
So let's talk about the first release. We've kind of talked about, let's dive deep into the first one out of the Imperialis gate, which is Capri, a child of Juice and Loki, your hazy IPA, your Voskavike. What makes Capri better than, or at least very unique from, the sum of its parental parts?
Yeah, as I was saying earlier, whenever you do breeding, you get a mosaic or a blending of the two parent strains. And we find that Capri, it is quite different. It has a lot of great fermentation, great acidity, and it also has a great flavor and roundness. And it is very unique though. So I think that, as we said before, where you have a blend, two different strains as a co-pitch, then over time when you reuse those, they kind of get out of proportion. You don't really know what you have. But with a single pitch, a single strain, you're able to monitor that and know your beast a little bit better. And yeah, Capri ferments great, and it has a lot of great flavor. So it works really well with hops. And we found that using a little bit of active fermentation, dry hopping, is really one of the tricks to using this strain properly.
Okay, so if something, let's just say a hazy, was fermented with Juice, Loki, Capri, are you able to kind of walk through just what a little bit of those kind of like changing nuances you would expect from, just kind of like a basic recipe, a recipe X with these three strains against each other?
Yeah, so we've done that in the past. That's one of the things that we do here in lab to evaluate strains. And yeah, so looking at just physical attributes, Juice is going to have that chain forming, whereas the other two don't. And one of the things, I can't really name this because we're going off of sensory here, so it's a little bit less analytical. But if you ever taste a Kvike, like lager, an IPA or something like that, there's a certain quality to it that you can kind of name. I'm not really sure if anyone's come up with the correct terminology for that. But in my opinion, I don't think that the I-22 really has that. It ferments great. You're going to get your classic hazy IPA off of juice, every, giant, fruity esters that everyone loves. And so I-22 really follows somewhere right in the middle of those.